Hello everyone, welcome to the video. Please like and subscribe. Also, check out the author in the description. And with that, let's begin. Chapter 21, Reactions. Third POV. The heroes of UA were all sitting in the auditorium of UA with all of the students, those that had provisional licenses and those that didn't have them. Each and every single student was in the room with the staff. The reason was due to the recent events over the past week and a half. There was the Camino incident where All Might came to an end and Yagi Torhisanri was revealed. There was the rise of the Verdant Emperor and his men. There was their declaration of war. There was a declaration from the government suspending due process for almost anyone that supported the group. The declaration of execution for Inko Midoriya. The failed execution of Inko Midoriya. The fall of the National Diet Building. The conquering of Osaka. The reveal of the UA traitor and his death. The conquering of Wakayama. All of these were shocking events that happened back to back within a span of a week and a half. As such, the staff felt it was needed for a school body meeting to happen and for the students to ask any questions that they wanted to ask. The question ranged from if they were safe to if they should leave UA to ensure that they weren't targeted for being associated with the school. Nezu spoke up and calmed everyone down. Now please, calm down so we can talk and hear everything. An ectoplasm clone will come around and hand a mic out. If you're picked to ask the question, but I will start with what we know so far. So it might cover some information you might want to know. Nezu stated and started to speak. As it stands, we know the following about the Verdant Emperor and his Verdant group. His name is Izuku Midoriya, born near here in the Shizuoka Prefecture. He was born to Inko Midoriya and Hisashi Midoriya. Nothing is really known of Hisashi Midoriya at this time since the man left the picture when Izuku Midoriya was declared quirkless at the age of 4. From there and from what we can gather, Izuku Midoriya suffered relentless discrimination and physical violence at the hands of his classmates and severe neglect at the hands of teachers. The only person that showed love and care for Izuku Midoriya was his mother Inko Midoriya. He suffered through this life for a decade before the final last day where he met All Might after a villain attack. Izuku Midoriya asked All Might if he could be a hero while being quirkless and was told no. It's our belief that this set the stage for what he did next. Nezu said and paused to take a drink of water, and started talking again. He was left on a roof after being told no, and soon left it and found himself at the villain attack of the sludge incident where some of you might remember one Akatsuki Bakugo was involved in and held hostage. Izuku Midoriya got involved and bought some time to save him before All Might arrived and saved the day again. Izuku was then scolded by all of the heroes on site for rushing and when none of them did anything to begin with. Izuku then left and was found again by All Might, who attempted to correct his statement, but it was too late. Izuku Midoriya's heroic drive to be a hero had been destroyed due to All Might and the previous hero's actions. This boy kept himself going for 10 years in the hope of All Might's word that anyone could be a hero, and then was crushed one final time before he set off and started planning. He faked his death, which caused everyone to stop looking for him after 1 month since Quirkist views. The police dropped it since Quirkist officers didn't want to look for a quirkless child who was likely dead. This allowed him to operate undetected this entire time until the Verdant group started to show themselves with all of the attacks on UA where they prevented them from succeeding. They were building up to the final showdown between All Might and All for One where they had the world's attention due to the fight and announced their presence to the entire world. We don't have much information on their group at all nor their current membership numbers, but we expect in the several thousand. We also have the issue of one of the Verdant guards, who are what we assume the most loyal and strongest members of the organization. Has a cloning quirk that allows them to clone their own members, which increases their numbers and stops us from getting accurate membership counts. Any questions based on all of this information? Nezu asked and everyone was silent, but one person raised their hand. It was Uraraka. Ectoplasm moved over and gave her the mic. Sir, sorry if this seems rude or not, but how the fuck does our current society operate like that? The more I hear about them, the more I feel my insides twist because I want to support them even though I'm on the hero's side. Uraraka stated. Nezu nodded his head at that question. That is a fair question. Humans are cruel. Humans are cruel to their own kind and those that they deemed weak. Some societies are far better than us in these matters, but as the Verdant Emperor has pointed out, we have been stuck for 200 years since our laws haven't changed. This allowed so much to happen and people to go unpunished that it became normal until people like Verdant Emperor were born and rebelled against the system. Nezu stated. Everyone was muttering things but soon quieted down. Nezu fielded more and more questions until one came up from Bakugo Katsuki. This question is for All Might, if I may, he asked, and Nezu turned to the former hero who stood up and walked to the mic near Nezu. Yes, young Bakugo, All Might asked. Do you think the government should surrender? Do you think society has gone so far that it needs to change leadership? Because I know Izuku from my childhood. I am one of the people that harmed him as well and tried to break his spirits and never succeeded. I won't deny that, and I can tell you right now he won't stop. He won't stop until society changes and the old government is out or he and his men are all dead. Bakugo said, and everyone's eyes widened at his confession. Even his own class, who has been trying to get answers out of him the entire week or so, and he's never said a word. He's kept silent the entire week until now, and now they just found out what he did. You might be wondering what kind of monster I am. I can tell you, I am the monster society made me because in our school they never told me no. They encouraged what was done to Izuku Midoriya, and honestly, I can't blame him for doing all of this. I didn't start learning what I did was wrong until coming to UA, where Aizawa-sensei would reprimand me for my action. This is society's actions that have led to this, so I ask you again. Do you think the government should surrender? Do you think society has gone so far that it needs to change leadership? Bakugo asked, and he waited for his answer. All Might was still in shock at what he learned and didn't know what to say. That was until Nezu snapped him out of his thoughts and he realized everyone was looking at him. I don't know. I honestly don't. Up to the day of the battle, I had a firm belief in this society that I was protecting, that I was a symbol of peace and people were happy. I knew there would always be someone unhappy or being wrong, but I didn't realize how big the issue I was blind to was. However, I can tell you this. My belief in this society was indeed shaken by Izuku Midoriya. He now has me questioning everything. So I don't know. I don't know what will happen when he has completely control of the nation, but I do know that no matter who wins the war, we can't go back to what we were before. We need to change for the better, or more Izuku Midoriyas will keep appearing and throw our society into chaos, until we get to the point that they are no longer born due to our own actions. All Might stated, and Bakugo nodded his head as the man returned to his seat. As the questions kept going on, Nezu's phone vibrated. He pulled it out and his eyes widened. He projected the news on the projector in the auditorium for everyone to see. The news was breaking as the military attempted to launch an assault on Osaka and Wakayama, and they had failed. 2,000 military members were slaughtered and 8,000 captured. It also broke out that the prefecture of Hyogo had fallen to the Verdant as well. This meant that the group had more or less split the country in half and blocked transportation of heroes, police, and military via land transportation off. If the government wanted to move forces from one side of the country to the other, they would need to do it via air or ship now due to the Verdant group taking Hyogo. This would put a lot of pressure on the government, and it was only roughly 2 weeks since the Verdant group had declared war, and they had already taken 3 prefectures. Though they would have to wait for the death count to come from the Verdant group and independent or international reporters that have been following the death counts. However, some reports were talking about how the government had put more resources into the military attack that they had left Hyogo undermined, which allowed the Verdant group to launch the successful counterattack. Everyone in the room was in shock at the news they were seeing live. Nezu, though, was cursing the government for underestimating the Verdant group so much and only sending that small of a military force. They should have sent at least 25,000 or more. We don't know their actual numbers, so it's better to play on the safer side, Nezu thought as he gripped his phone. Nezu was not liking the looks of things as they kept moving forward. The Verdant group had taken 3 prefectures in 2 weeks, and if they kept that rate up depending on resistance from the prefectures themselves, then the Verdant group could conquer all of Japan in less than 20 weeks or roughly a half of a year. Then Nezu heard someone shout a question. Nezu turned around, and then the mic for the student was turned on after Ectoplasm gave it to the student. Sir, do you think the Verdant Emperor will honor his words when he said he won't touch the hero schools, or is there a risk that he will revoke that? Asked the second-year hero course student. Nezu thought it over for a minute before speaking. At this time, I have no evidence to show or suspect that he would revoke his word on not touching the hero schools. As such, if you have a provisional license and don't want to be targeted, I suggest you stay on campus moving forward. We can see how the Verdant group waited until we removed Mr. Minda from campus before attacking the police escort to retrieve him. It shows sadly that even if you anger them, that they won't directly touch the school and wait until you leave. Though that is outside of the fact that we can't launch any operations from this campus. If we do, then we lose that protection. However, let me make this clear. If the government loses the war, then there will be no hero schools. I am unsure what will happen at that point, since they have made it clear they will transfer policing power back to the police instead of the heroes. A theory I have is that they might create some sort of new hero system that is inside of the police that will have more restrictions and transparency to ensure more heroes like Endeavor don't happen. It's possible hero schools would be converted to include police academies to train people, but it's unknown at this time, Nezu stated, and that calmed the worried students down a bit of fearing an attack on the school. Soon the meeting came to an end and Bakugo was told to report to the staff room. The staff wanted more answers of what he did and who Izuku Midoriya was before he became the Verdant Emperor. Chapter 22, Growth and Overhaul. Third POV. Several weeks have passed and the Verdant group has been expanding their influence in the underworld and taking control of more prefectures without the public or government noticing yet. The Verdant publicly controlled everything in purple. while they controlled all of the light blue prefectures, the pink prefectures, and the following of the green prefectures, Kanagawa, Saitama, and Gunma in the underworld without publicly controlling them. Since Izuku wanted to demoralize the heroes and government with a constant taking of prefectures to show that no matter what they did, they didn't stand a chance at winning. The death count currently stood at 35,000 on the government side, 200 people on the Verdant side, with 1,000 civilian deaths so far. The civilians' count wasn't pleasing to Izuku, but he knew it would only rise. The membership of the organization after taking control of all the villain and criminal organizations in these areas has risen from 800,000 members to 1,150,000 members. Their combat-able forces stood at 580,000 members, which now equaled the combined forces of the Japanese military forces, the heroes, and the police force all combined. Izuku was happy at that and knew that he still had a slight disadvantage against the military due to their advanced weapons. Nothing beats old-fashioned military weapons and guns, Izuku thought as he sat in his office deciding on the next move. Izuku in honesty wanted to gain control of the entire south side of Japan before pushing north, but he knew things don't always work in his favors, and right as he thought of that, Dabai knocked on his office door and came in with some disgusting news. "We've found a Yakuza that I want to wipe out. They can't be combined with us due to their sick crimes. They are experimenting on children. Well, rather, one child. A girl named Eri. From what we found out via the spy network is that the boss overhaul is making quirk erasing bullets like we are," Dabai stated, and that made Izuku curse since he didn't want anyone else getting their hands on that since it would screw them up. The bullets provided them a good last means measure of stopping a powerful individual on the government side's quirk, so they didn't lose many people. "What do we know about their progress in current affairs?" Izuku asked Dabai. He started reading off anything they currently knew as it stood. "They haven't fully made the bullets yet. We've caught it in time. Their current ones only last for seconds and they plan for permanent versions. The biggest problem is they are using the girl as an ingredient in the bullets, unlike ours, which is 100% artificial. They are using her blood since her quirk rewinds things out of existence. They are using her blood, which has some attributes of the quirk, to make the bullets," Dabai stated, and that made Izuku pissed off. Izuku told Dabai to continue talking, and he did. "As it stands, we could wipe them out quickly, but the problem is her quirk and its control. We need a way to help her control it, and the only real person that could help keep her under control is Eraserhead. We could use quirk erasing bullets, but considering what she went through is an issue on our side. She is heavily traumatized due to overhaul, and the villain is being investigated by Sir Night-Eye, who has no idea about Eri. Their investigation has been going on for about 5 months now," Dabai stated, and Izuku groaned at Sir Night-Eye being involved. "Fuck, I don't want him seeing the future since he could try to screw us up or see our bases," Izuku said, and Dabai nodded his head at that. This was a huge risk of getting involved, but Izuku wasn't about to leave the girl to get experimented on any more than she needed to be. Izuku sat there for a bit before telling Dabai to call a council meeting. About an hour later, all of the council and Inko were present in the council meeting room. Izuku was sitting at the head of the table and looked at everyone. "Dabai has brought some disturbing news to me about a villain group we approached to absorb. They are called the Shai Hasekai and are led by a villain known as Overhaul. He sees quirks as a disease that needs to be wiped out, and he is doing this via creating quirk erasing bullets, and he plans to make a permanent version. He currently has a version that lasts only a few seconds, but the problem outside of that is that he is using a little girl as the key ingredient due to her quirk," Izuku stated as he showed them all the information. Inko was horrified, and she wanted the girl out of there as soon as possible. "I am considering going to UA to seek their help on this issue. All operations will keep moving forward, but the Shai Hasekai needs to be dealt with. The problem with us just doing it is the fact that it's in Kanagawa, which is far away from our public-controlled land. We do have the national diet, but it would mean showing our hands if we did a large operation in that area so far away from our publicly controlled land, since it would show we have far more abilities than we have let on. Also, the girl's quirk is unstable and could wipe us out of existence, so I want Eraserhead on the case to help us, and she would go into his and UAS care. He could help control her quirk, since she has trauma to needles, and she was also being used to make the bullets. Unlike ours, she wasn't, but she wouldn't really know the difference," Izuku stated, and everyone thought about what Izuku said and soon agreed. Stain spoke up. "Sir, if you are going to UA, since you don't use clones due to the issues it could cause, then I suggest taking a heavy presence to ensure they don't try to kill you or arrest you during your negotiation," Stain stated, and the others all agreed. Izuku didn't really want to look like he was attacking UA, so he decided to give Nezu an advanced warning of his trip to UA. "Fine, but I will give Nezu an advanced warning so he can come out and greet us instead of being caught off guard. I think he will be smart and not alert the government, but he still will be on guard," Izuku stated, and they all agreed. That is how they ended up in front of UA. Izuku had sent Toga to go warn Nezu, and watching via the bug user was so fun since they all got shot. Flashback. Toga, go send a clone to UA and request a meeting for me tomorrow at noon, Izuku said, and Toga sent a clone to go do it and used a different face for her clone. Soon the clone arrived outside of the UA gates and pressed the button. Nezu's voice came over and he spoke. Why, hello, Verdant Member. I'm assuming you're the same individual from before. May I ask why you are here? Nezu asked in a cheerful tone. But Toga could hear the slight tension in his voice. From her experience of spy work. Indeed, I am the same, and I would like to meet you and your staff. I have a message from the Verdant Emperor for UA, Toga stated, and soon 2 teachers came outside and escorted her inside. After some walking, she found herself in the meeting room and she took a seat across from Nezu. Now may I ask what message the Verdant Emperor wished to be delivered? Nezu asked, and Toga nodded her head. My Emperor would request a meeting with you and your staff at noon tomorrow. We have a proposal that we would like to work with you on in regards to an important matter we discovered, Toga stated, and everyone's eyes widened. Even Nezu, who is known to keeping his emotions in check, couldn't, since the enemy leader wanted a meeting so far out of their land. He did want to come with a light guard, but some of the other high members didn't want to risk the government getting any bright ideas of trying for his head when he came so far away from our controlled land. As such, he will be accompanied by several advanced teams to ensure his safety. We trust UA won't try anything since it would violate your neutral grounds deal, but off the campus is another story when we come and leave. Are you willing to have this meeting? Toga asked, and Nezu was in thought as his entire staff looked at him and wondered what he would do. Yes, I will have the meeting. I am interested in talking to the Verdant Emperor. Who all may I invite to this meeting? Nezu asked, and Toga said any UA staff was welcomed or those connected with Sir Night-Eye agency since it involved his agency. Nezu raised an eyebrow at this and nodded his head. Nezu started to make the calls as Toga's clone left to deliver the news back, or rather appeared to do so, since they didn't want them knowing that they already knew the answer. Flashback end. Izuku with Dabai, Stain, Mr. Compress, and Twice were all with him in their real bodies, while they had 4 advanced teams in their real bodies as well. If anything happened, Twice would clone everyone, and the Verdant guards would defend Izuku while the advanced teams took any threat out. They came out of a teleportation gate in front of UA and found the entire UA staff waiting for them, including All Might. Soon they were led into the school with the heroes on their sides to ensure no student or anyone got any bright idea and risked the school's safety. The students saw the Verdant Emperor on campus and news broke fast around campus. However, they were all stopped from getting close as the Verdant group was led into a large meeting room that could fit everyone. The meeting room was actually UA's gym that was next to the track behind the school. They converted the entire building for this meeting. They suspect possible future meetings to happen most likely, so they are dedicating an entire building to these meetings. Izuku thought as he sat down. Hello, Verdant Emperor. As you may know, I am Principal Nezu of UA. Nezu introduced himself and Izuku bowed slightly. Izuku looked around the room and noticed Sir Night-Eye and Myra, the 9th user of One for All. Hello, Nezu. I'm sure you are wondering why I asked for this meeting, Izuku stated, and Nezu nodded his head. As Sir Night-Eye is aware, there is a villain organization that goes by the name of the Shai Hasekai. It's led by a villain known as Overhaul, Izuku stated, and Sir sat up and asked how he knew about them. My spy network came into possession of a lot of information about them, and there was quite troubling information about them that shows that they need to be dealt with. I'm not liking the speed at which Sir Night-Eye's investigation is going, so I decided to involve myself and bring it to UA's attention, Izuku stated, and Nezu nodded his head and Sir stood up and said, another example of why the hero system is foolish. You heroes have gotten so high and mightily that anyone with opposing beliefs, I suggest you shut up and sit down, since you've clearly demonstrated that you know nothing of the Shai Hasekai, and have only hardened my resolve to get involved in this matter, because you either are playing a fool and hiding information or are really clueless about the Shai Hasekai. I don't know which would be worst, Izuku stated, and Sir looked pissed. Nezu told him to shut up and sit down and asked Izuku to explain what he knew. Overhaul sees quirks as a disease that needs to be wiped out, and he is doing this via creating quirk erasing bullets, and he plans to make a permanent version. He currently has a version that lasts only a few seconds, but the problem outside of that is that he is using a little girl as the key part due to her quirk, Izuku stated as he showed them all the information. The heroes were all horrified. Izuku then looked at Sir Night-Eye and spoke. So did you know about that hero? Or are you done being a pathic fool? Izuku asked, and Sir Night-Eye sat down without speaking, since he didn't know about the girl. I'm reaching out to UA to help take them out, and then I would like Eraserhead and UA to care for the girl. I would do it, but waging a revolution after all, Izuku stated, and Nezu nodded his head. The reason for Eraserhead to be in charge of her is because her quirk is unstable and he can stop it if it turns on. He is the best to help the girl live her life, Izuku stated, and Eraserhead groaned about taking care of a child, but he said he would do it. Nezu asked how the Verdant wanted to help. We can provide men for the raid on them. alongside the heroes and police. If both sides are willing to have a ceasefire regarding whoever is on the raid teams, then we can provide a few advanced teams to help in the raid. But I expect no one to try and arrest them after the raid is done and allow them to return to the national diet," Izuku stated. Nezu thought it over and Sir grumbled about working with villains, and Izuku just rolled his eyes. "Sir Nidai, I don't see how you can call us villains. Were the Americans villains when they rebelled against the king when they founded their nation? Or the French when they overthrew their kind in the French revolutions? History has shown that humans have the right to overthrow the government when it no longer functions and is corrupt. The hero system needs to be replaced and the leadership of the nation replaced so that it can move forward. The current system is only a cycle of creating villains for the heroes to beat, instead of fixing the actual issues which you heroes ignore. So don't sit there and act all high and mighty, because your government is getting their asses kicked and are losing the war," Izuku stated with a scowl, since Sir Nidai only contained to piss him off as he kept talking more and more. Nezu brought the meeting back onto the point of the meeting and sent a glare at Sir Nidai to keep himself shut. Soon they came to an agreement, and they would launch an assault in the next few days after gathering some heroes and police. Nezu promised to ensure that the Verdant men would not be touched, and soon the media got word of Yue and the Verdant working together to take out a villain group conducting illegal experiments in a prefecture that the Verdant doesn't currently have control of. The media was abuzz with questions, and the government tried to stop it, but Nezu shot back that the government should focus on the war instead of the smaller matters, and that Yue would do as it pleased to stop groups conducting human experiments. The government wasn't pleased, but Nezu had contacted heroes who agreed not to touch the Verdant group before, during, or after the mission. This would also mean the police wouldn't have the power to stop the Verdant group even if they wanted to try it. Chapter 23, Savory. Third POV. The day of the raid had arrived, and Izuku already had clones of Toga sneak into the compound to locate Eri beforehand. They had abducted several members of Overhaul's men. As such, they would be able to blend in without raising suspicions. The idea was that Toga's clones would attempt to locate Eri before the raid even started, but they weren't having much lunch in finding her in the areas that they were allowed to be in as lower-ranked members. As such, it did limit the area that Eri could be hidden into a certain section of the base. Now you might be thinking that the Verdant group had a map and everything. Well, they did. However, it turns out the base can change shapes due to one of the members' quirks, which had made the raid a bit more complex. As such, they had to send the bugs back into the new pathways and map the base out the day of the raid, which compacted matters since Izuku didn't want the heroes knowing of their spying method. As such, he informed them that their spies inside informed them the interior had changed due to one of the higher-ups' quirks, but that they had limited the area that Eri could be into a certain portion of the base. As such, the detective found zero lies in Izuku's words. And he still hid the truth of how they spy on people in reality, since everyone is thinking that they were using clones of their Morpher quirk user to spy on people, which was true in some way but not their main source of information. Izuku and his teams arrived on site for the raid, and the heroes were kind of shocked that he himself was present for the raid. It took some talking to his guards to allow it, but they agreed if he kept them at his sides at all times. If he broke away from them even for a minute, then he wasn't going to be allowed to go out on future missions easily, which made Izuku pout a bit, but he had to accept their demands. It was quite funny to most of their men how Izuku was teased by all of his Verdant guards when he pouted, and it just reminded everyone what they were fighting for. And more importantly, who they were fighting for, as they all wanted to push Izuku to the highest point so he could lead their nation to a better future, even though they all came from horrible backgrounds and committed many crimes. They all wanted a better future, and they were going to get it through making the Verdant Emperor the leader of all of Japan. Izuku looked around at all of the heroes and caught Sir Nidai's glare. That man really doesn't like me at all, Izuku thought, and it was understandable since Izuku more or less destroyed the peace that All Might had created. Izuku had destroyed the illusion of hope and peace that All Might had fabricated in front of everyone, when in truth the society of Japan was falling. Izuku then moved to the detective who was on site and asked him if the hero side was ready, which Izuku gained a confirmation. After talking a bit more of any last-minute changes, they all gathered up and moved forward towards the raid, and in 5 minutes they arrived on site of the compound. And the raid started when a follower of Overhaul burst out of the gates, throwing some police in the air. But some of Dan's team members grabbed them before they could get hurt. "Verdant, move in," Izuku shouted, and all of his forces charged in with the heroes. Izuku, though, didn't tell the heroes that he kept several advanced teams of Verdant members hidden nearby because, let's be honest, Izuku isn't stupid. He knows very likely that the heroes wouldn't pass up a chance of trying to capture once this was all over. As the people started to make their way into the base, they encountered some resistance to their fighting, but Izuku trusted his men. They had several orders given to them, which included not being captured by the heroes and not hold back on killing any member of the Shai Hasekai group. It was about 10 minutes into the raid when Izuku was informed over the comms link with his men that they had found the location of Eri and that she was being currently held by Overhaul and a few of his men. They were currently fighting Lemillion, who had separated from his group and went ahead of everyone else, which Izuku found annoying. Izuku ordered all of his men to start heading off in that direction of the base. About 5 minutes later, Izuku arrived to see a shocking sight. Sir Night-Eye was dead and Lemillion was in shock from seeing his mentor killed in front of him. He was so shocked that he didn't notice Eri had been taken from him. Damn hero had let the girl get taken away from him. I know it's tough to see someone die that is close to you, but not saving the girl means he dies in vain. Izuku thought as he leads his men towards Overhaul, who was pissed to see the Verdant group. Why are you opposing us? We could have joined forces, Verdant Emperor, and wiped out the quirks, Overhaul yelled, because he knew Izuku was quirkless and should understand his desire to remove quirks from the world. Honestly, I will admit I've thought of removing quirks as well, but realized they aren't the issue. Humans had the same issues before quirks came, but we just focused them more on quirks as an easier outlet. Also, human experiment crosses the line for me, Izuku shouted as he dodged some spikes that got sent his way. Dabai lit the minions of Overhaul on fire, killing several of them, but a few escaped and Overhaul grabbed some of them and combined with them to create some weird creature as he held Eri in one of his hands. The girl was so scared of what was all going on. Izuku fell back behind his men since it was an agreement he made with his Verdant guards that he wouldn't be too risky with his attacks and allow them to do most of the fighting while he ordered them around. Izuku had ordered Mr. Compressor to get Eri somehow with his quirk and get her out of there. Mr. Compressor nodded his head and worked with a few members of the advanced team and had a few clones of himself made by a clone of twice. Once the clones were ready, they were sent ahead and one advanced member with a telekinesis quirk used their quirk to pull Eri from Overhaul. The moment there was enough room between Eri and Overhaul, Dabai with a few clones of himself set the space between Overhaul and Dabai on fire so hot that Overhaul couldn't go through the flames even using Overhaul since it destroyed his body faster than he could recreate it due to being so large. If he was in his normal form, then he could likely get through, but with such a large body it wouldn't be possible, which worked to their advantage. Soon, Mr. Compress had Eri and started to fall back behind their lines, but didn't leave since there wasn't a good route to get out without being attacked. Though, that problem solved itself as a hole in the roof was made when the dragon hero Ryuko came blowing through as she slammed a villain through the street and down into the open room below it. Izuku and his men saw the chance and their priority was Eri over Overhaul. As such, they used the new route and escaped outside, but were followed by Overhaul, who came out of the hole as well. Did Lemillion really get taken out just because of Sir Night-Eye's death? Is his will so easily broken? Izuku thought, since he has seen no appearance of Lemillion, the ninth user of One for All. As Overhaul came out of the hole, a large number of heroes came over and tried to fight him, but they were not having much luck. Izuku decides to have about 10 clones of Dabai go up from him, and the heroes moved back at the sight of them as Dabai let his fire loose and started to burn Overhaul alive just like they did to Endeavor, but this time they weren't going to stop. Nope, the goal was Overhaul's death and they were going to get it as the man screamed in pain, and about a minute later the fire died down and Overhaul was in ashes. The detective came over and asked about the girl, and Izuku looked at one of his men who had the marble, which they realized, and Mr. Compress undid. Out came Eri, who looked scared, and her quirk appeared to start turning on. Everyone back away. Her quirk is turning on, and we need Eraserhead now, please. Izuku called out as heroes searched for the man. Eri, it's going to be fine. I need you to calm down. Overhaul is dead. He can't hurt you anymore, okay? Izuku stated, and her eyes widened at hearing that. Izuku then pointed towards the piles of ash and restated that Overhaul was dead for good. As Eri took the information and she fell over as her quirk turned off and Izuku caught her. She's burning up, likely due to her quirk side effects on her body since it hasn't been trained properly. Izuku stated, and the detective made notes of it for Eraserhead and Yue. Izuku then handed her off to Eraserhead as he arrived. Eraserhead, remember my condition for this entire thing. Eri stays in Yue custody and she's not to be given to anyone. If for some reason Yue can't defend her from the commission or government, then figure a way to reach out to us and we can take her in somehow, since we can hide her from them. I just don't want her to be surrendered by people training and working in a war all of the time, but we could make do if need be. Izuku stated, and Aizawa nodded his head in understanding and took a few steps back. Izuku looked around and saw all of the heroes looking at him and his men. They might try something like I thought, Izuku thought, as he looked at his men and confirmed with them quickly that he had all of their actual members with them, which they confirmed that they did, and then they also had some spare clones left over. Izuku then saw Lemillion walk out of the crowd and his face was pale. Aizawa had a disgusted look on his face, and Izuku could guess the man didn't like where this was going. So, I take it the pro heroes are going back on their words and will try to capture us, Izuku stated, and everyone tensed at his words. Lemillion spoke up though. We have our orders from the commission and are to arrest you the moment the operation ends. If you refuse to surrender, then we are told to kill you, Lemillion stated as he gripped his fists and looked at Izuku. Understandable. I kind of predicted this as a result. Do you honestly think I didn't come prepared for that result? Izuku asked, and everyone's eyes widened and tensed up. Izuku then looked up and saw a news camera and started to yell, "Hello, people of Japan. These are your heroes." Not even seconds after stopping a villain group doing human experiments are your heroes breaking their word. They turn their back on human decency. And unlike us who keep our agreement and our words of not targeting the hero schools, these heroes break their words that they agreed to. Remember, Japan, these are your cowards of heroes, the dishonorable heroes. We are Japanese people. Our cultural history was built on honor, yet the heroes who are meant to protect you have none. Take to the streets and protest, more citizens of Japan, and demand for the government to surrender to the Verdant so we can move Japan forward for a brighter future. Izuku yelled out to the news helicopter. The heroes on site thought he was crazy, since there was no way the news helicopter could hear him from that distance when Izuku smirked. "Remember, I said I planned for this possible situation. I hacked into the news network feed moments before the raid started, since I knew the local news station would get a helicopter in the air the moment they heard of this raid. Everything I said went through a microphone I had on me this entire time, including how you admitted to being just dogs of the corrupt Hero Commission Lemillion. It's wonderful to know that you don't serve to protect the citizens of Japan and instead of your masters in the Hero Commission. You are a false hero, Lemillion, and I truly expected more from you," Izuku stated as a portal opened right under them and they dropped through it before the heroes could react. Izuku's little speech had bought the teleporter user enough time to create a gate at their position. Did the other teams get pulled out? Izuku asked about the teams that were hidden in the area near where he was, and they confirmed that they were pulled out already right when they were. Izuku just smiled as he moved into the base section and saw the news reporting about the incident and how the heroes broke their agreement and had no honor. They were also taking shots at Lemillion and were using Izuku's words of him being a false hero, which made Izuku smirk, since even the news media companies that he didn't control were talking about it in the same tone as Izuku had used, since Izuku was right. Japan was founded on a country of honor through their ancestors who fought as samurais and warriors in the old times. The honor aspect was still important to the Japanese people even after quirks came around, and Izuku used that to his advantage. Social media was on fire, hitting at Lemillion and the heroes that tried to arrest the Verdant members. Chapter 24, Aftermath of the Raid. Third POV. As Izuku was enjoying his time at his base and dealing with his organization's affairs, Lemillion had returned to UA under the insult of people that he went by, as many had seen the actions of the heroes on site of the raid and were disgusted with what the heroes had done. Lemillion gripped his hands and was pissed. He was pissed that he didn't really save the girl they went to save. He was pissed that his mentor had died. He was pissed that the Verdant Emperor had gained even more public support against heroes and the government by using what they did for his organization's benefit. Though, he couldn't blame Verdant Emperor for too much, since he hated what he had to do as well. No, instead he blamed the Hero Commission. As Lemillion entered the UA campus, he was asked to go to the staff room since All Might wanted to meet him. As Lemillion knocked on the door, he was called in and told to sit down. All Might looked at him and asked what he was feeling at the moment, and Lemillion could only say rage and anger, and All Might nodded his head in understanding, since Sir Night-Eye just did die to overhaul earlier in the day. "Sir, what are we going to do about Verdant Emperor? At the rate he is going to win and overthrow Japan," Lemillion asked, because he was honestly clueless on what to do about the villain known as Izuku Midori. All Might was silent because he honestly didn't know. I don't know if I can honestly support our own government either, with the things I've come to learn about our society. It might be time for a change, to be honest," All Might stated, and Mirio was shocked at what he was hearing. He looked up at the man before him, the former symbol of peace, and realized the man was not hiding his honest views, and that was honestly disturbing, that the symbol of peace had given up on the government itself. It might be time for heroics to come to an end. We don't even have a clear grasp on how much fighting power he has, but it's been clear that he can control prefectures, and he's doing quite well at it as well. His organization has hidden quite well in the shadows, and he is doing something All for One even failed at, All Might stated, and Mirio wonders what he was talking about and asked the man. Izuku Midoriya has captured the hearts of the people, not through fear or threats but through simple acknowledgement and respect for him. Verdant Emperor is ruling through loyalty and kindness, while our government or All for One wanted to rule via fear and intimidation, All Might said, and Mirio couldn't help but agree, but it didn't mean he liked it. He always dreamed of becoming a hero and saving people. What was he going to do when that was gone? What was he going to do when the country he knew was gone completely? What about One for All's purpose of maintaining peace? Mirio asked, and All Might shook his head as he spoke. One for All was meant to stop All for One becoming the symbol of peace, and everything else was the individual user's personal goals. As such, One for All isn't meant to stop people like Verdant Emperor. The purpose of the quirk came to an end when Verdant Emperor defeated All for One instead of us, All Might said, and Lemillion sat there in shock as he didn't know what to do now with everything. All Might told Lemillion to just rest and recover, as more fights would be going on soon. Lemillion nodded his head and returned to his dorm, but while that was going on, Izuku Midoriya was looking over the overall organizational outlook of his group. Izuku was shocked when he returned to the base and received updates from his men. Due to the actions at the raid, there were a lot of organizations that decided to submit to the Verdant Group in fear of being wiped out by the Verdant Group. As such, they received notification of surrender from most of the villain organizations in Akayama and Tottori, which now given them a foothold in the orange area of the map. They gained a total of 30,000 new members from these two prefectures, which Izuku was pleased with. Of the new members that joined, only 10,000 were capable of being used for combat in the views of the organization, so they now have 590,000 that belong to their military side of their organization. The biggest thing about gaining control of the underworld for Tottori and Akayama was the fact that these prefectures are where the weakest military line was currently being held, due to the fact that the government not wanting the Verdant to spread towards Tokyo, where the center of government was located. They had a large military line with heroes included in the prefectures of Hi, Gifu, and Fukui, though they don't realize that the Verdant Group already controls all of those prefectures' underworld locations. As such, the military defense line in Tottori and Akayama is far more lacking in support than the northern military line. Izuku was happy with this since it would allow him to quickly push further south and take control of all of South Japan quickly if he played his cards right. He didn't want to be fighting a war on two fronts, even though he could with twice clones. Soon, though, it was time for a meeting of the higher-ups to happen, so Izuku moved over to the meeting room. "Hello, let's start," Izuku said, and soon the meeting started. They were talking about the information they gained from the raid and what was going on currently with the after effects of the heroes trying to take him out right after the raid. Overall, Lemillion has taken a massive hit. There are people calling for him to quit being a hero, but it's unclear if he will, and most likely not though. It wouldn't matter if he did or not, since we need to always be watching him due to how big of a threat he poses to our organization due to his power of being the ninth user, Toga said as she read the reports from the spy division. Everyone nodded their heads and they talked about the new prefectures they gained. The conversation then moved into if they would be making any more prefectures publicly controlled, and Izuku thought it over before answering. "I want us to gain control of the underworld for all of the Orange Land. Once that happens, we will start publicly controlling that. After we stabilizing our control in the underworld there, we will launch an assault on the military line that is quite unmanned in my views. Once we push through the lines, we will make a sweep of the entire region, which would be a massive blow to the government. After that, I want to conquer everything else in the south of Japan before we focus on moving north," Izuku said, and everyone nodded their heads. They talked about also the start of implementing the new changes to the system for the police. Hero schools would be converted into police academies, and higher standards would be implemented with the help of the police, who have been somewhat cooperative with them since the Verdant hasn't pushed the police to fight back. The police have been acting like normal, and they were honestly surprised by the sheer drop in crime under the Verdant leadership, as the Verdant Group was implementing many programs that sought to provide jobs and other things for people facing homelessness or other issues. After a while, Izuku called the meeting to an end since they talked about most of what they needed to talk about. Izuku moved to his main office where his mother walked in. "Hello, Mother. What can I do for you?" Izuku asked as she came into his office. She looked at him and asked if he has taken a break lately, and Izuku just laughed. "I am leading a war. I don't have time to take a break." "Why?" Izuku asked, and she suggested that he goes out and just relax for a while, but he groaned at that. "Where exactly would I go, since I am a wanted man where many people want my head currently?" Izuku asked, and she said in one of the places he had under their control. He looked at her and knew she wasn't going to drop it until he took a break, so he walked out and went to his guards and told them what his mother wanted him to do. That is how Izuku found himself sitting in a park in the Osaka prefecture, resting under a tree. Some people were tense at seeing the leader of the rebellion out in the open, but some children who had balls of steel in Dabai's words ran over to Izuku and asked if they could put paint on him. Izuku shrugged and told them to do what they wished. As such, Izuku was sitting under the tree, as children gathered around him and were using face paint to paint on him, while some girls were making flower crowns as they would put it on Izuku or the other Verdant members that were standing guard around him. People started to take pictures of him, which ended up hitting the media. "I have become a joke. How is the government meant to fear me after this?" Izuku said as he put his head in his hands and groaned, while the kids just laughed at him. This caused everyone in the area to start laughing as well, which Dabai spoke up. "When have you ever been scary? We literally call you our little emperor, so I don't know when you ever thought you were scary to us," Dabai said, in a questioning manner, which just earned a glare from Izuku, but no one really paid any attention as most of the civilians started to relax around Izuku. Then an alarm went off on Izuku's phone and he stood up. The amount of time I agreed to get out of my office has passed, so my mother can't say anything to me anymore," Izuku said, with a fist pump which just earned eye rolls from his guards. "Yeah, until you spend more time working non-stop again. Then she will make you come out again." Dabai said as they all stood up and started to head off as Izuku waved goodbye to the children who asked him to come again. Soon they returned to the base to find everyone looking at them. Izuku asked what was wrong and they told him to look at the media, and Izuku almost fell over. He was the talk of the nation on how he was sitting and allowing children to paint his face. Some were questioning if he really was the leader of the feared group that had been screwing with the government the entire time, while others talked about how it showed his group wasn't going to rule in fear after they took over. It had become a heated debate across social media as well. Well, this helps us, I guess, a bit on our image. It helps establish that we don't plan to be cruel, since they could see me interacting with little children, Izuku said. And right after he said that, his mother walked by and said she knew her plan would work, which got everyone's attention as she explained how she made him go out on purpose to establish a better image instead of being a feared ruler for the civilians. Izuku broke into laughter at that and then looked at her. Well, I always wondered where I got my craftiness from. Seems I am not the only mastermind here, Izuku said, which made everyone break out into laughter. Izuku enjoyed moments like this where he and his group could relax just fine. And with that, I'll see you all in the next part. Take care and bye-bye.